It all started with a dinner party. My husband, Daniel, had been working late for weeks, trying to impress his new boss, Mr. Grayson. So when Daniel came home one evening and announced that Mr. Grayson had invited us to a dinner party at his mansion, I was both excited and nervous. "This could be a big deal for my career," Daniel said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "Just be on your best behavior, okay?" I rolled my eyes. "When am I not on my best behavior?" He gave me a look, and I laughed. But deep down, I was curious. I'd heard so much about Mr. Grayson, his wealth, his influence, his larger-than-life personality. I couldn't wait to meet him. The night of the party, I put on my favorite little black dress and spent an extra hour on my hair and makeup. Daniel looked handsome in his tailored suit, and as we drove to the mansion, I felt a flutter of excitement. The house was even more impressive than I'd imagined, a sprawling estate with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a grand staircase that looked like it belonged in a movie. Mr. Grayson greeted us at the door, his smile warm and welcoming. "Daniel," he said, clapping my husband on the shoulder. "And this must be the famous Claire. I've heard so much about you." I smiled politely, shaking his hand. "It's nice to finally meet you, Mr. Grayson." "Please, call me Victor," he said, his eyes twinkling. The party was in full swing, with guests mingling in the opulent living room and servers circulating with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Daniel was quickly pulled into a conversation with some of his colleagues, leaving me to fend for myself. I was sipping a glass of champagne and admiring a painting on the wall when Victor appeared beside me. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, gesturing to the painting. "It's an original Monet." I raised an eyebrow. "Impressive." He chuckled. "I have a soft spot for art. And for beautiful women." I felt a blush creep up my cheeks, but brushed off the comment as harmless flattery. Victor was charming, I'd give him that. But as the night went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me a little too closely. It wasn't until later, when I excused myself to use the restroom, that things took a turn. I was washing my hands when Victor appeared in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. "Claire," he said, his voice low and smooth. "I was hoping I'd get a moment alone with you." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "Oh." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. My stomach churned as I realized we were alone. "I have to admit," he said, his eyes locking onto mine, "I've been fascinated by you ever since Daniel first mentioned you. You're even more stunning in person." I forced a laugh, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, thank you. But I think my husband might have something to say about this conversation." Victor smirked, taking a step closer. "Daniel's a lucky man. But I can't help wondering, does he truly appreciate what he has?" I felt a surge of panic. "Victor, I think you've had a little too much to drink." He shook his head, his expression serious. "I'm perfectly sober, Claire. And I want you to know something." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm not a man who minces words. And I have to tell you, I'm 9 inches." I blinked, sure I'd misheard him. "I'm sorry, what?" He grinned, clearly pleased with my reaction. "You heard me. And I think you deserve to know what you're missing." I stared at him, my mind racing. Was this really happening? Was my husband's boss seriously hitting on me in his own bathroom? "Victor," I said, my voice firm, "this is completely inappropriate. I'm married to your employee, for heaven's sake." He shrugged, unfazed. "All I'm saying is, if you ever get tired of Daniel, you know where to find me." Before I could respond, he turned and walked out, leaving me standing there in stunned silence. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I avoided Victor as much as possible, sticking close to Daniel and trying to act normal. But my mind was spinning. How could I tell Daniel what had happened? Would he even believe me? When we finally got home, Daniel collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but happy. "That went well, don't you think?" he said, loosening his tie. I hesitated, then sat down beside him. "Daniel, there's something I need to tell you." He looked at me, his brow furrowing. "What is it?" I took a deep breath, then spilled everything: Victor's comments, his advances, the way he'd cornered me in the bathroom. To my relief, Daniel's expression darkened with anger. "That son of a—" he cut himself off, running a hand through his hair. "I can't believe he'd do something like that." "Neither can I," I said, my voice trembling. "What are we going to do?" Daniel was silent for a moment, then he reached for my hand. "We're going to handle this together." The next morning, Daniel and I woke up with a shared sense of determination. The shock of Victor's behavior had worn off, replaced by a quiet resolve to address the situation head-on. Over coffee, we talked through our options, weighing the pros and cons of each. "I could report him to HR," Daniel said, his jaw tight. "But he's the CEO. Who's going to believe me over him?" I reached across the table, taking his hand. "We'll figure it out together." Daniel nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. His career was on the line, and the last thing he wanted was to jeopardize everything he'd worked for. But at the same time, we both knew we couldn't let Victor's actions go unchecked. Later that day, Daniel went to work as usual, while I stayed home, my mind racing with possibilities. I couldn't shake the feeling that we needed more than just our word against Victor's. If we were going to confront him, we needed evidence. That's when I remembered the security cameras. Victor's mansion was equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance, and I was willing to bet that the bathroom hallway had been caught on tape. If we could get our hands on that footage, we'd have proof of his inappropriate behavior. I called Daniel at work, pitching the idea. He was hesitant at first. Breaking into Victor's security system was risky, to say the least, but he agreed it might be our only shot. That evening, we put our plan into action. Daniel had managed to get a copy of Victor's schedule, and we knew he'd be at a business dinner until late. We drove to the mansion, parking a few blocks away to avoid suspicion. The security system was no joke, but Daniel had done his research. Using a combination of tech skills and sheer luck, he managed to disable the cameras long enough for us to slip inside. My heart pounded as we made our way to the security room, every creak of the floorboards making me jump. But we made it without incident, and within minutes, Daniel had accessed the footage from the night of the party. There it was, clear as day. Victor following me to the bathroom, cornering me, and leaning in far too close. The audio was muffled, but the video alone was damning. "Got it," Daniel said, saving the footage to a flash drive. "Let's get out of here." We left as quickly as we'd come, our hearts racing but our spirits high. For the first time since that night, I felt a glimmer of hope. The next day, Daniel requested a meeting with HR. He went in prepared, armed with the footage and a detailed account of what had happened. To our relief, the HR team took the matter seriously. Victor was called in for a meeting, and while we weren't privy to the details, we heard through the grapevine that he'd been reprimanded and placed on probation. It wasn't the outcome we'd hoped for, we'd wanted him gone, but it was a step in the right direction. In the weeks that followed, Daniel and I grew closer than ever. We'd faced a challenge together and come out stronger on the other side. And while the experience had shaken us, it had also reminded us of the importance of standing up for what's right. As for Victor, he kept his distance, his once charming demeanor replaced by a cold, professional facade. Daniel continued to excel at work, proving that his talent and dedication were more than enough to succeed without playing anyone's games.